for that, Ugo. I really appreciate it. So my name is Gospel Obele. I'll be taking us through a session called Business Growth in Uncertain Times. Previously in the panel sessions in the morning, I'd mentioned that every uncertainty comes with two basic things. There's a cost side to it, and there's an opportunity side to it. Um, the cost side to it is what a lot of people actually see and talk about, but people hardly can see the opportunity side to it. That's because it's a lot easier to see when things are not working than to see how well or the potential of things working from a bad experience or, so to speak, a crisis. Yeah, so the crisis, a period of uncertainty presents the cost, it presents the opportunity. In the times that we are in, right, there are many costs to the impact of the pandemic and all that, and how it has shaped what the world now calls the new normal. In terms of the impact, we've seen that economies have shut down, there's a slowdown in the economy, there's a global recession happening, there is a national recession happening in the Nigerian space. The cost of living has gone high, the standard of living has dropped, people have lost jobs, people have been sacked, people have had close to 40 to 30% salary cuts. There is now the adoption of remote work, which has seen so many debates around how effective and how can we improve remote work. So the world order has changed. There's also conversations around everything will now be tech driven. All right, virtual meetings, virtual engagements are now the new normal. Will the world return back to where it used to be? The answer is, if the world return back to where it used to be on a 100% level, the answer is no, because this pandemic relatively has come to stay, because no cure has been found at the level at which it can enable people, lives, and communities get out of that space, right? So there's a whole lot happening. There's a whole lot that is changing. A whole lot more will change. It means that the average individual would have to begin to think in terms of the cost side of this and the opportunity side of it. Where do I want to dispense my emotional and intellectual energy on, right? And how do I begin to rework things pertaining to my life, my business, my family, my career, my finances to ensure that I can be on the proactive end of this divide or on the proactive end of all of these experiences. So, what the session seeks to achieve today is to help us understand what we can do, in terms of driving business growth in uncertainty. Um, all right, so trying not to time myself. I need to know how much time I have. Okay, so I will just start the session now. I'll share my screen so that I can share my presentation with us. All right, we're trying to look at, well, as much as you can see Nigeria in 2020, this will also apply in any context relatively. The basic lessons, the fundamental lessons will apply in any context, not just for Nigeria, but I know that majority of our listeners are Nigerians. That said, we want to look at how can we drive business growth in uncertainty. So, like I mentioned in the morning, I had a panel session where we discussed how we can thrive in downturn. And now in this second session, we'll be doing how can we initiate business growth. Initiate is the key word. Business growth in uncertainty. Um, so I run an organization called Streetnomics, and basically we do socioeconomic research, brand building and evaluation, the market intelligence development. We basically help organizations and people use data to get strategic direction or make informed marketing decisions primarily. We have worked with private institutions, we've worked with government, we've worked with banks, we've worked with stakeholders at different in trying to help them use data and information to improve what they are doing and all that. I've had a great honor of speaking about economics, business, and policy at different TV platforms in Nigeria, and it's been a very great experience doing that in recent times. Um, okay, so these are a few initiatives that we've engaged in. So the morning, like I mentioned, we talked about traveling in downtown, and I shared 5 steps to doing this. All right, let's go straight into the business of the evening. Business growth in uncertainty. Excuse me, let me just put my phone aside. All right, business growth in uncertainty. How do we navigate uncertainties to ensure that our business grows? But before we get here, we need to first understand where we are coming from. The interesting thing about hindsight is that it helps us appreciate the situation or where we find ourselves now. And if we do not understand where we find ourselves now or what led us to where we are now, it will be a lot more difficult, right, to do the necessary or engage the necessary intellectual rigor, assessment, reviews, and then to know what's practical and pragmatic steps that we need to take to get to where we're headed. So before now, the Nigerian economy saw a lot of dynamics in 2017. The average growth was about 2.5%. We saw that the central bank had raised the amount of money that commercial banks can lend out to people as an average of 60% of their deposits, right? There was a lot of focus on the creative sector. Of course, the Nigerian borders were closed. There was an introduction of the finance bill, which later became a finance act, and the primary um, backbone of this bill is to raise tax revenues, right? And I'm driving at somewhere. I just want us to follow me closely, please. This implement the Organizations Who Earn More Than 25 million per year used to all these 40% of Nigerians were said to be below the poverty line. This implement the organizations who earn more than 25 million per year. Most of all these 40% of Nigerians were said to be below the poverty line with growing complex social problems. Another thing that we saw again towards the close of the year was that the cost of goods and services, the cost of food basically, had gone up, gone high. And currently the inflation numbers is at 12.4%. I think the number has been reviewed upwards a little more. And that's basically because over the last few months, we've seen the border closure, we've seen low interest rates, and all of these things. What I'm trying to drive at is that Nigeria has grown in recent times, leading up to where we are now, to become a cost driven economy. A cost driven economy means that the cost of living is high. It's a lot more expensive to do things than it has ever been year on year as events and time evolves, right? So, and the major impact of these things have been on food, education, housing, and transportation. These are major places where the average consumer gets the hit the most, right? These are pressure points for the average Nigerian. So if you run a business, for instance, let me bring it home. If you run a business, for instance, or you are thinking of going into business as an entrepreneur, you need to understand that the so-called basic essentials of life, you know, are already huge cost points for people in the Nigerian economy, especially low-income people. So price of food is high, price of gaining quality education is high, price of formal housing is high, all right, the cost of transportation is high. And those are the basic necessities of life. So if you take it up a step two, three, four, 10 further, you realize that the higher it goes in terms of, if you look at the Abraham Maslow hierarchy of needs, the more expensive it is, all right, to live a life. And only if your income is, in abundance. Even those that their income are in abundance, they are also being careful about how they spend and the like. So things are happening. Most consumers in Nigeria are primarily categorized into three spaces. So whatever business you're doing, you have to realize that the average consumer is categorized into three spaces. There are the traditionals; those are the people you call the low income consumers, right? They are large. They are the largest group of consumers. They are price sensitive, right? They mostly operate in the informal market. That means all these vendors, select, and the likes. Then you have the rising. These are the middle class individuals, right? And they have growing and relatively stable income. Are we together? The middle class have growing and relatively stable income. So what that means is that over time somebody leaves the university, gets a job, and then because of all of that, you can afford a little bit of things here and there and all that, but they are still price sensitive, right? And they're very important in the customer or your consumer segment mix. No matter the business you run, you would have to segment your customers or your target market across these three. So I'm building something, I'm getting somewhere. I want us to follow me closely. Then there are the third part. Now, under the rising part, there are the people you call the middle class. There's the lower middle class, then there's the higher middle class. The lower middle class are what you call the early adopters. They are just getting into the space of the middle class environment, right? So and they are just picking up, they are aspiring, all right. They are majorly aspiring consumers, and they are seeking to explore, seeking to experience life at a new level. While the upper middle class are those who have a more stable income. Probably their kids attend private schools and they work in good organizations, and they can just afford things at snap of a finger. Then the thriving are those ones who are very buoyant, right? They are of very high income, very educated, very sophisticated. Like I say, they are the cosmopolitan um, consumers, very fashionable, and they're always abroad and all the likes. So these are the primary landscape. Are we together? Hello? Are we together, please? That what happened was that as a result of the cost impact on the economy, I'll try and rush through this slide so we can go into the meat of the day. The consumers, these three blocks of consumers, they've been a redirection and a further redistribution, meaning those who were formerly at the rising stage have fallen back to the traditionals. Those who are at the thriving stage have fallen to the rising stage, right? And that's because the cost of living is relatively high. So the business environment, which you can also call the economy, is in Nigeria has not primarily enabled an improved standard of living in the sense, but you've had different components of cost. And I proved I show you the impact is they are on food, clothing, education, and transport. So this new consumer is characterized with increased spending. People are spending not because they have a lot of money, but they are spending so much money because things are generally expensive. And I'm talking about pre-COVID now, right? This is where we're coming from. They are spending because a lot of items are either inelastic or they're aspirational. Inelastic means that there are goods you cannot do without. Aspirational are things that you want to buy. Maybe somebody buys a smart TV at home so that you can do your Zoom meetings, you can watch YouTube live on your TV and all that. Not because you've earned so much money or made so much money, but because you are also an aspirational. And Nigerian consumers are very aspirational. Limited budgets and tougher spending choices. Most consumers are price and brand sensitive, but are culturally driven. All right. So they believe they want goods and services that would help them. They want goods and services that can deliver, to what the manufacturer has said this thing will do. So, for instance, you make a particular product and sell them, and you say when you use this product, A, B, and C and D will happen. Consumers in Nigeria, regardless of the class they are in, they want to experience the use of of your product, and it delivers on those three things you mentioned. Despite that, they are prepared to buy what, and what, Are we together? They are driven by culture and irrationality. They are driven by emotions. They are driven by words of mouth. They're not really driven by logic in as much as they want to experience that product once it's being used. So there's financial insecurity and a lot of things. So where are we now? Please follow my session closely. Where are we now? Now I've tried to show to us that all of these experiences have put the average Nigerian in a place where they are spending. And generally, the Nigerian economy is not so much of a production driven economy, right? So it's more of a consumption. Now, there's been an increase in entrepreneurs, but you realize that the entrepreneurs we are having now in Nigeria are not necessarily out there, right, to do business for the sake of personal and socio-economic development, right? Most people are doing business as a result of survival, right? We need to survive, we just need to keep body and soul together, right? And that is why I'm getting somewhere now with this. It's going to be a lot more difficult for so many Nigerian businesses to survive the times we are in now. If you do business for survival, right, or you go into business with a mindset to survive, you cannot cut through once uncertainty comes, and uncertainty is here. You cannot cut through. It's going to take a whole, there's a science and an art, right, to cutting through and maximizing uncertainty for business growth. So the first thing I need to say and establish at this point is that what you need to reevaluate, what were the reasons why you went into that business in the first place? Is it for survival? Is it to put food on the table? Is it just because you want to be wealthy and be financially okay? That may have worked prior till now. But going forward, the people who would win on the opportunity side, like I mentioned when I started, that there is a cost side to every uncertainty, and there is an opportunity side to every uncertainty. The cost side talks about the bad things that happen, how COVID-19 is affecting businesses and shutting people out of business, reducing revenues, profitability margins, and all the likes. The opportunity side is what new businesses, what new sectors are thriving. So the thing is, step back and review and ask yourself, this current business I'm doing now, did I go into it for survival? That may have worked on pre-COVID, but going forward, if you want to be able to make the most of the uncertainty we find ourselves in now, you need to revisit the motive for doing business. Because to make the most of uncertainty and to unlock uncertainty itself, into deriving value and making the most of it for your profit, right? And for large scale commercial profit would mean that your motive behind that is different, because you need something bigger than self to be able to cut through the difficulty of certainties. Said gold gold has to be refined in the fire before it comes out as gold itself, right? So ability to pass through that fire experience, you need something bigger than self to take you through that. You need something bigger than self to apply the principles of what it will cut through. For instance, when Moses saw the burning bush, he moved closer and realized that although there was a burning bush, but the bush was not burning, right? And he was able to tarry through that period to understand what was going on. And then he discovered and realized what the next assignment was, by searching and proving the mind of God. So the ability to search and prove the mind of God, that patience, that waiting through the process would come from a deeper place than just wanting to survive. So the COVID-19 pandemic is a natural filter. It filters businesses who were there for just me, myself, and I, right? And then empowers businesses who were there for personal and wide commercial scale development. All right. So where are we now? Looking at where we were before and where we are coming from. COVID-19 has shaped the Nigerian economy, it has shaped the global economy, and the Nigerian economy is projected to get to a recession point to shrink. Sorry, the Nigerian economy is expected to shrink by minus 3.4%. All right, so the economy is expected to contract by 3.4%, meaning that the the rate of business activities, economic activities, transactions, engagement will drop by 3.4%. And this is global. If you look at the table here, if you look at the 2020 column, you see many contractions. A lot of countries globally are contracting because the lockdown has happened. Supply chains have been disrupted, imports are on hold, there are restrictions, there's a trade-off between public health and economy, right? The cases are rising on a daily, cure has not been found, economies have to slow down so they don't expose themselves too much more anymore. So a lot of things have happened. In the first quarter of the year, we realized that business activities dropped sharply from an average of 61% to less than 51%, which shows you that the Purchasing Managers Index, which is the index used to track the growth of business activities, all right, both manufacturing and non-manufacturing activities, have declined over time. Right? This session is not to make us feel bad or anything, but it's to help you appreciate, because like I mentioned when I started, you cannot make the most of uncertainty for growth if you do not understand properly where we are now. All right. So first of all is the mindset. What brought you into business in the first place? Was it for survival or for something deeper than self? Right. Once you understand that mindset, you need to work on it and begin to change that mindset. The second thing about mindset I mentioned was that there is a cost and opportunity side to every crisis. The cost talks about the problem and how it is affecting everybody. The opportunity talks about the problem and how it can improve things going forward. The biggest brand, Instagram, Microsoft, Facebook, General Electric, General Motors, the biggest brand to celebrate today, either started before a major crisis, during a major crisis, or after a major crisis. So either way, it tells you that the biggest brand you have today have either gone through or were birthed during or after the crisis. So that means there's a dream, there's an aspiration, there's a business idea that God has deposited in your heart that will be birthed through this crisis and be launched on post-COVID. So you cannot get to that point if you do not understand the dynamics of uncertainty. The science of uncertainty speaks to understanding what the issues are, what are the critical factors, and how do you reposition your mind to make the most of it. The art of uncertainty talks about taking that uncertainty, looking at where you are now, looking at the environment you're in, and thinking for yourself, how can this whole thing be improved, be used in such a way that I can improve what I'm doing now, or probably even change what I'm doing now that fits into the nature, the profiling, the dynamics, and the daily experience of people. How do I maximize the environment that I'm in right now, despite the fact that we have all been hit, as a businessman? So that's what I'm trying to get us to see this afternoon. So after the mindset, then you now have to talk about information, right? Trying to gather information and understand where we are now, which is what I'm trying to do with this couple of slides, right? Before we go into the crumbs of the matter. And information will mean trying to understand how much has this thing affected our businesses. Now, on pre-COVID, we projected that increased consumer spending due to increased costs, right, on inelastic consumables, not really higher incomes. But post-COVID, consumer spending will be threatened with higher costs because naturally and artificial, and because these costs will be naturally and artificially induced, right? And they're also coupled with lower incomes. What that simply means is this: because supply chains have been disrupted, and demand is already in existence, it means that there will be few goods and services available to serve the market. It means that there will be, and once few goods and services are available to serve the market, it means that the cost of goods and services will go high. Secondly, it also means that because people are not earning as much as they used to earn, what it now means that people would not have the capacity, all right, to buy in volume or engage at the level they used to on pre-COVID. So there's going to be a lot of cost implications, right? There's going to be a drop in volume of transaction revenue. There's going to be weaker purchasing power and tougher consumer choices. There's going to be drastic change in models of big brands. Big brands will be forced to rethink what should have been, in quotes, the blue ocean, but now they have to survive. So they'll be forced to think through that because they need to survive. Now, there are growing investments and support to fight COVID-19 by the private sector, despite the shutdown and other experiences we've had. But the idea of social distancing itself as well as new trade restrictions will create more operational costs. For instance, the average airline needs to be filled to 80% capacity before it can be said to be profitable for a trip. But with social distancing, that means that an average airline cannot be filled to 80% any longer. And because the cost of fueling the aircraft for a flight is still the same thing, the operational cost does not necessarily change. What would they do? They would increase the price of tickets. So if an airline can do 200 seats, if 200 seats make up 80% capacity of the airline, because of COVID and social distancing, they will have to do 100 tickets. So what that means is that the cost of 200 tickets will factor into this 100 tickets. So the social distancing will bring costs per unit of an item. All right. And what that means is that the cost of traveling and every other thing will go high. These are deep things that business people are supposed to know. Supply chain not being in raw materials not necessarily being available, right, will increase the cost of supplies. All right. All of these dynamics will increase the cost of transportation, right, and all of that. Although you have technology to close the gap, but there are many sectors that technology cannot close the gap. If you need to fly from Lagos to Abuja, you would need to be on the aircraft physically. It means you have to pay more. All right. So some sectors have been badly hit, some sectors will rise. These are examples of brands who have been trying to change models to adjust to the realities of what we find ourselves in. You have a Coke Hotel, they now deliver at home. Guinness that would say that, a professor once said that the future of Guinness is not in the Irish pubs, but in the Lagos bars, right? But now, with COVID-19, we are saying that even the bars have been brought to the homes of people. So Guinness now currently delivers 247. A Coke Hotel now currently brings the food to would normally not do, but because COVID-19 is changing the landscape, everything. Now, understanding business growth in uncertainty. Are we together, please? Can I see a wave of hand to be sure that we are together? Um, Hello, are we together? Can somebody wave just to be sure that I've not lost us? Oh, okay. So understanding business growth in uncertainty. Let me just move on. Now, there are five mindsets, like I mentioned, the transformation and readiness. Now, when you appreciate it, when you talk about mindset, you want to talk about perspective, yeah, clarity, information, and then readiness. Now, passion on post-COVID, it is not just enough to have passion for a business idea. It is also very critical that your passion will mix with clarity, right? If you do not have clarity and you have passion, that takes intelligence. That resilience will be misused. And maybe even abused. If you do not have clarity and you have passion, that takes intelligence. That resilience will be misused and maybe even abused, right? Right. So if you know you're a tenacious person and you can stay through a thing, post-COVID will require you being more than just being more than just tenacious, right? To getting intelligence, knowing how things are done. Secondly, there's a need to seek understanding. There's a need to seek understanding of the times from a general and context perspective. So knowing what's going on within your context, that's your environment, your society, your country, the sector, the business you are in, right? And all that. Now, holistically assess and review cause and effect options within your sphere. Now, I understand as Africans, we are not so much of a people who are given to deep dive logical reasoning or a form of intellectual rigor, in processing, understanding, and evaluating things. We are not so much of those people. We are, to a very large extent, culturally driven, right? We view everything from a cultural lens. To a large extent, we are very emotional. We are carried away with stories and gist. We are carried away with alternative facts or alternative news, not necessarily the truth or the fact. We are not given to objective reasoning. We're not giving in to pruding or reviewing information or thrive on post-COVID, right? Or would walk through uncertainties and come out stronger. Our businesses have effectively sought to redeploy or deploy intelligence, asking questions, verifying options, rethinking and reviewing business models to ask themselves, where am I now? Right? Where do I want to be before now? And how has this whole pandemic all impacted on this? Now, let me please state this. This third point is very critical because even businesses that have the capacity to succeed on post-COVID may also fail if they cannot engage in intellectual rigor that they need to figure things out and to properly understand the situation. I'll say that again. Even businesses that have what it takes to survive on post-COVID, probably who their sectors have not been badly hit, may even stand a chance to fail because they may not be able to critically evaluate and go through the rigor of intelligence and asking sincere questions, doing a situational analysis to know how to improve and how to keep their heads above the waters, for success on post-COVID. Now, this part is spiritual, but I'm plugging it into this part of this presentation because I believe that the bane of the Joshua Leadership Project is our Christian values. Now, as a Christian entrepreneur, you have to learn to also engage traveling prayers and intense worship to release yourself into the next phase, right? And this is going to help you disconnect from every trained incapacity. That means that you are good at something or you've done something so well or for a long time that you are not flexible enough to adopting the changes that come as a result of external impact on that thing or changing environment on that thing. So you need to get to a place where you can release yourself and understand what ideas and perspectives. Moses went to the bush. He saw a burning bush, but when he moved closer, he realized that the bush was not burning. But he went on his feet and he listened and watched closely before he could hear what God was saying at the time. So we need to submit ourselves in traveling prayers and intense worship to discover heaven's perspective concerning the times we are in, the business we are in, the sector we are in, the environment that sector thrives in, and what strategic steps we need to take. Some of us, we need to change course completely. Some of us, we need to change the model completely. Some of us, we need to retweak a few things in the model, but we need to be able to we need to be flexible enough to know what changes to make. Number three, we need to read and think for a change. Now, a lot of people pray and worship, but they don't read and they don't think for a change. Now, reading will require studying transformation platforms, right? Or reading transformative books, looking at good information platforms, high-level information platforms to understand where this thing is really going. Follow the patterns. Now, the problem with information overload is that it can get to your emotions, but you have to find a way to manage that, right? As you read, study, pray, assess exactly you need. Now, you need to think options markets in clusters. Please follow me closely. You need to think horizontally. Now, when to do business on post-COVID or to do business in the midst of uncertainties, the same product or service that you offer to people, you have to think of it in three critical ways. Rather. You have to think of them in clusters, right? So this product I have right now. How can I serve this product in clusters? So if I run a travel agency and now that once COVID is over, how can I begin to serve this product in clusters? Knowing fully well that there are changes right now and there are impact around group travels and all that, right? Secondly, how can I serve this product or service vertically? Meaning that if you're doing mass market before, can you have a part of your product that you can create for premium markets? Right? And when you're in premium market before, can you find a way to scale the product down that you can also serve mid or mass market? Now, when you're serving mass market, can you create more options for mass markets? Right? If you're serving premium market, can you create more options for premium markets? I would suggest have a premium product and create more options for premium markets, then have a mass market part of your product lines and create more options for mass markets. right? That way, you're using like a Toyota model. Toyota and Lexus belong to the same company, but there are different models of Lexus, there are different models of Toyota. The goal is the average income person should be able to afford the Toyota, right? The middle income to higher class individual should be able to afford the Lexus. That's the psychology around it. So you want to play around that. So particularly now, you need to rethink and reinvent your business model. Move from the place of being intuitive to being counterintuitive. The question is this: what do we preserve? Right now in the business, what processes, what resources, what units, what partnerships should we preserve? This is the business as usual zone. This is the staying zone. This is the limited expand. You cannot expand so much in being in this zone. And it's largely unfit for today's consumers and the markets we're in, right? And as a result of post-COVID and the uncertainty it brings, staying in this zone is largely is not advisable. But you need this zone to know what you need to keep, right? When you are traveling for an event or expansion or something, you don't take all of your things. You take some things with you. So see it as you're in transition, the business transition. So the question is, on the intuitive block, what do I need to keep? What in the business right now should I keep? Right? Then what in the business should I take out? Should I eliminate? So if your business model has to do with large gatherings of people, then you need to do your SWOT analysis and identify All right, let me just say that again. I didn't know
Hello,
that.
sir. Are you? Do you have? Okay. Welcome back.
Okay, thank you. So I'll say this all over again. So we need to moving from intuitive to counterintuitive. It's a product of research and intelligence. Like I mentioned earlier on, asking ourselves deep questions and not relaying or playing on the average cultural limitations that have held us back. The average individual is emotional, is largely given to stories, is largely given to alternative facts. But in this context, we're asking ourselves, using research, using data, asking questions, reading, reviewing, getting information from the right sources, asking people who have gone ahead, right? What do I need to stop doing right now that can stand against my progress through this uncertainty, right? So there is an intuitive zone. Now you need to preserve some things, right? Research and adequate questions, because don't ask yourself biased questions. You need to drop a few things. Now, from what you dropped and what you kept, you explore on what's obtainable out there, which is the innovative block that we're moving to. At this point, you now need to innovate. The question here is, what products, people, units, etc., right, should we deploy for the next big thing? This zone is what they call the business unusual zone. It's called the action plus review zone. This zone brings about customized solutions for today's consumer segment. All right. So one interesting thing we need to know that consumer dynamics are changing. Like I mentioned earlier on, if if you're just joining in, you may need to get the recording or catch this video on YouTube. I've explained a lot of foundational dynamics before getting to this slide. So you need to please listen to those things to properly understand, appreciate, and strategically deploy what I'm saying now. So there is need to understand how COVID-19 or the uncertainty we find ourselves in, or any other time in a point of our lives and businesses, to know how these things have shaped our target market. Do your target market exist? What has changed about them? What's their socio-economic standard of living? What's the cost of living impact on them right now? Can they still afford your product at the price or level at which you build it prior to this uncertainty? Can you keep doing business as usual with the customers? Have your customers actually changed? And what has changed about them? These are deep, sincere questions. That is why the counterintuitive block is driven by research and intelligence. You need to ask questions, you need to probe further, you may need to do a survey, and don't get lost in passion or vision for that thing that you love. Because passion and vision without clarity during a period of uncertainty can be a wasted effort, can be resources wrongly channeled, right? Can be even passion or vision underlived or underutilized, right? And even if you have resilience, you've done this for the past 10, 15 years, you've been pushing this for the past 10, 15 years, you need to understand that your intelligence, your resilience still has to meet with intelligence. You need to ask the right questions so that your effort, your energy, and all that you put into the business all through the years can count as changes happen. All right. This slide, the next slide, gives us an idea of how consumer markets are changing and what is changing about them. Right. Some of us have sold to Lagos and have stayed in Lagos for how many years? This pandemic, the major thing you may just have to do will be to start selling to other markets, right? There are more clusters in other markets that have so much money to pay for your goods and services than just Lagos. For instance, right? If you make more money selling to Ibadan with Ogbomoso and Ilorin as a cluster than selling in Lagos only. You make more money selling in Benin City, Onitsha, Enugu, Warri, Aba, and Port Harcourt as a cluster than staying in Lagos or in Abuja only. You make more money selling in Kaduna, Zaria, and Kano as a cluster than staying in Kaduna, in Lagos or Abuja only. So there are bigger clusters, right? There are newer markets. There are more cluster markets. Your consumers are more clustered. They have more money to spend, right, on that product or service that you are offering in other parts of Nigeria than just Lagos only. And with technology, you can find a way to link that up so that people can place an order for something online, and then through logistics or something, you get it delivered to them. So there are many logistic companies now that would happily carry your goods and services at a cheap price or at a reasonable amount, to deliver to your clients in other states. So think of serving in clusters. Think of serving vertically. Think of serving horizontally. Think of serving cluster in options, right? So what other complementary products or other versions of your product or services that can be sold along with the core product itself in other clusters? That is cluster options. What other product or service, or even the product or the service that you sell, right? Can you make a premium version out of and sell to the higher class, especially in options? And then how can you scale it down and sell to the mass market in options, right? So these are critical cluster points. Anybody who is not thinking in clusters or thinking in mass market or thinking in vertical markets will be out of the game very soon, right? These are different business opportunities mapped out across the 6 geopolitical zones. So Nigeria and the world will likely be a slow growth space, but people will keep spending. And because people will keep spending, people will keep investing, it is not just only important to follow the money. In fact, a lot of times follow the money can be very stupid too. Is to strategically find the market. Because sometimes money is not just an indicator of where the opportunity is. The market is a bigger indicator. The market is a bigger indicator of where the opportunity is. So if you can unlock and redesign the market in a cluster way, or in a vertical way, or in an horizontal way, you'll be able to even milk the money. The money will not be the one following you. So, in my own opinion, follow the market, the money will follow you. Do not just follow the money. Follow the market and let the money follow you. Realize that we are going into more expanding pockets of costs. Now, pockets of cost, I've explained that earlier on from my foundational part of this presentation, right? Realize that people are going to be paying more for less. People are going to be, it's going to be a lot more difficult for people to spend. So, perceived value will be at the core. So, you must find a way to tell the story of what I'm coming to that. Tell the functionality. I'm coming to that. I'll come to that. So, there are now tax relief for SMEs, and there will be a lot of changing policies around. So, keep your ears on the table to know how government policy is changing your business this period. Consumers will be more sensitive to price like never before. There'll be more expanding opportunities as a result of market redistribution. So what that means is that the person you may be selling at 40K or 40,000 naira to may, as a result of the pandemic, go down on the income line and can only afford it at 10,000 naira. You need to be able to know who these people are in your consumer market. Now, the individual who probably spends 10,000 naira as a result of one or two things. Maybe he now got a job in a big tech firm and tech is now blooming this period. May be able to pay 50,000 naira for that product that you sell for 10K. So you now have to know these people and know how to deal with these pricing dynamics that has come as a result of uncertainty. Never forget, your consumers or your market are thinking of surviving, right? They are thinking of affordability, but affordability is relative and survival is also relative. So you need to understand where you are, where your business is, and how do you introduce solutions in such a way that you can make the most and be proactive enough to latch on the market opportunities, not just what you are hearing, not just hear and say. There's a growing need for more functionality and irrationality. Now, this is where I was coming from. If you have a good product, this is the time to talk about the functionality of that product. Functionality will mean, what are the health benefits? What are the user benefits? Does it help me save time? Does it help me save money? Does it help me improve my health? Does it help me become a better person? How does it improve my life and well-being? You need to be able to find the functionality of that product that you sell. If it's a service, does it save me time? Or how do you do the service that's completely different from others? We're not talking about conventional or motivational talks. No, we're talking about what is that thing about your capacity that is way different in a functional way than every other person. For me as a researcher, it's context fit intelligence. When I tell you something about the Nigerian customer, you most likely may not be able to find it anywhere else just like that. Because I have gone in dirty to understand, to map, to analyze, to review, to relate, to engage the psychographical or the behavioral pattern of the Nigerian consumer. So there has to be something that your product and service does differently in a compelling and functional way. So if you sell a health product and it actually boosts vitamins and improve your immune system, that is your catch. All right. So build your stories, your communication, your selling strategy on that functionality, right? Knowing fully well that it is all of this, how will it help my life, in quotes. That is what the consumer wants to hear, not being the price. That's why I said affordability and survival are relative, and value is a perception. Affordability and survival are relative, and value is a perception. All of these dynamics is what determines what the consumer is willing to pay. So on post-COVID, you have to be able to deal with all of these three technicalities so that you can price your product and deliver your product to the right consumers. I think I'd like to stop here and take more questions. Thank you for your time.
So thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. Really appreciate your the lecture. It's important to it's important for us to understand about value. Thank you very much for giving us insight on how the future will look like. So, do we have questions? Does anyone have any question? Any question? If you have questions, kindly send it in the chat section or just unmute yourself and ask. Anyone? Anybody? Anybody? Okay. Ami, you're raising your hands. Do you want to say something? Hello, Amarachi or Ami. Hello, can you hear me? Okay, I think she can't hear me. So, so I really appreciate. Can we have your email address so that in case we have questions, so that we can forward them to you um, for you to answer. Do you get?
Okay, should I send it to you privately or to everyone?
Maybe just send to everybody, everyone, to everyone. Okay. So once again, we want to appreciate everybody for joining in on this. We really want to say a big thank you to you, our researcher and economist, for the wonderful insights. We really appreciate it. We apologize for the technical issues we had earlier, and we hope that um, in our next conference, I'm very sure we'll invite you and we'll have enough infrastructure to make things better. Thank you very much, sir. Once again,
Be
we
a
say
great
very
honor, sir.
big
Thank you
thank
for
you.
having me.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much. So that will be the end of today's session for our masterclass. You can join it back in on Facebook. We're already live. So just join in and let's continue the conference. We're still expecting lots of um, speakers. So please, everyone, join back in. Thank you very much once again. So have a wonderful weekend ahead, and I believe this words we've heard would cause a transformation in our personal lives and businesses. In Jesus' name, Amen. Okay, thank you very much. That will be
Thank you
all
so
for
much.
today.
Yeah,
Yeah, bye.
appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Yeah,
Thank you very much, everyone. I appreciate it.
yeah. Thank you. Bye.